what's out there. They don't build it today because they're not allowed to build it today, because everything they built it with is not allowable today, the same as your homes and everybody else's homes. But at this point now, we've got to move forward on something. We've got to make some decisions, and we're not getting any more comments. I mean, we're just not getting more representative comments. So based on what I'm hearing, we can leave it open for the next 6 months and wait till next year's election and leave it open again. It's not going to help our affordables. It's not going to help do anything up here. This property is dangerous. There's people going in here. Somebody can go in here and get killed. All these things can happen out there. It's not nice to go by and see boarded up buildings. It's just not nice. So we do something is better than doing nothing. But nobody is coming to us with $10 million saying, we'll take this from you. We're not carving things out. We're trying to keep Kirkbride. We're trying to keep the golf course, trying to keep the road building, trying to keep the courthouse, trying to keep the camp venture. I mean, it's kind of like, well, you can build in this court, but you can't build in that court. I mean, there's a lot of parameters here. So there's a lot involved here. And to get that perfect individual in this economic time is going to be very, very difficult. So I appreciate everybody's comments, but it sounds like that's the end of the comments because we're not getting the crowds to come in here to express it. I don't see anything in the newspapers as far as one avalanche. Legoland, yes. Desal, yes. So from this standpoint here now, whenever we're going to close it, the next meeting or whatever, I think we've got our comments, we make our decisions, but we're not saying anything on a hard basis here that cannot be changed or turned around and wrong. Again, it's laying out some idea, at least as George said, gives people an idea what they can do, what they can't do. We don't want condos out here. We don't want to have schools filled up again. We don't want to do those kind of things.
I understand. Yeah, I just want to make sure I was reading my comments correctly, that I was being supportive, I think, of what you're saying.
Yes,
I was just trying to be a specific concerns, but I think it's important that we move on this, obviously, for the reasons.
But environmental, how it looks, the readable aspect of it, but even the way it is, we're not getting any money for the readable.
Right.
It still hurts the taxpayers. We have safety issues. It looks horrible out there. You know, and it's
been 18 years.
We've got to move forward. We've got to move forward. So we're not going to keep everybody happy.
18 years.
That's
It has
Yes.
been 18 years.
3 years ago, I walked through every single building out there 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So I've been working on this for a while, and everybody here has been supporting it and working on it, and we're this close. All fair.
Are the documents that were available that I've gotten over the years, can you guys bring together the documents and put them on the website so people at least can?
We had the RFP there 3 years ago.
Yeah, but it's not there now, you can't find it.
You're talking about in the past, what we've done over the
Yeah,
years.
yeah, just
I'll
put
take
the history there so people can look and see what's been evaluated and what's been done in the effort that.
But you guys have been here, you heard it, but we had that RFP process. Even with that, we didn't have any interest. That was literally come in here and tell us what
The
you want to look
community
at.
reconstruction zone program has a whole bit of things on it.
Right. And the marketing aspect of this is really important. It's one of the reasons, the reason why we're doing this. It hasn't been done, it's unfortunate that it hasn't been done, and it's unfortunate that it's taken 18 years to get us here. But we are in a very challenging development climate, and we have a site that has very significant development challenges that are associated with it, that are very unique to this type of facility. So we know from experience that doing this type of spade work ahead of time enables us to better market the facility. And this property has never been properly marketed. We had a request for statements of interest that was sent out several years ago, but what we really need is to target specific uses and industries. We need to put effort into really going out to look at the investment community, to provide them with a construct for how they would do business here with us, given the challenges of this site. But none of that can be done unless we have the zoning done ahead of time. So and that's sort of in response to this comment that this is being rushed, that it's sort of willy-nilly. I want everybody also to realize that regardless of what comes in, there is still an approval process before this board, before the planning board, about if the character of this property is going to be changed, if buildings are going to be torn down, if there's going to be new construction here. I want to commend Max and his team, I think, for doing a very diligent job. I think the massing study that you did is terrific. And I support keeping this open for another 2 weeks, but I would like to see a vote in 2 weeks on this. And most of my comments have been incorporated, and I've expressed concerns about a couple of other things, but I would like to see a vote.
Can we post a revised law before that? Is that possible to have done in advance of the meeting?
That was my question. How far in advance of the 2-week vote that you're going to take would the revised plan from Max be posted so that we can look at it?
Max, how quick can you get it?
I can certainly get it at least by next Tuesday.
Okay, so a week it'll be on our website. So getting it Tuesday, it'll be right up on the website, available to the public.
Okay, good.
I just wanted to reiterate something. Mr. White talked about $10,000. He's only talking about the extra money. That's an extra $10,000 that we had to do with asbestos removal. We started with 30. So a room about a quarter of the size of this room that we're redoing our restrooms here cost us $40,000. The 10 that Jim's talking about is the extra money. In the beginning, it cost us 30, so it's really a total of 40,000. So imagine what the whole building is. Okay, so we're going to move on. We'll keep this open, and at this time, this shouldn't take long, not like that, but we have a public hearing on our sign, called our sign law. This is something that we've been talking about for months now. We have, I've been working with along with Max and Special Counsel Nugent. And Mr. Nugent, if you wouldn't mind just going over what we've kind of talked about. We're looking for an area, I don't say over there. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. As you're aware, this proposed local law for gateway sign has been through much discussion, and the public has heard in prior hearings. And at this point, based on that commentary, the discussion has been, and working with Max Stock, to reduce the potential locations to one at this point, which would be, the proposal is going to be 150 feet radius from the intersection of Fibers Lane and Route 90W. So basically, instead of having a local law that would be generally applicable throughout the town, this would be the location where the town would want to see the gateway sign, at least under the laws that's proposed now. So since that's kind of a material change, and we're going to insert the size of the signs, the limitations on that, we would redraft the local law and then send it out again to any interested parties, make it available to the public. It would be available by next Tuesday so that we could consider it on the 27th, or the public can be heard on the 27th with respect to the new revisions. So there also will be a map showing kind of that radius from the intersection for the gateway sign.
Yeah, I think that's really what we want to do. We want to get this moving along a little bit. We're not rushing it, but if you could put something together. I know I just had, I'm sorry, Tom, I meant to make copies for the board for this. I know, I believe Max gave us a little something over here on Fibers Lane and 9W in front of Aldi's. So there is service. I apologize, I didn't print more than one. I only have one. So this is what you're talking about. And I just picked one area.
Really what we did is we identified an area around that intersection, and I think 100 feet becomes too narrow because you really aren't getting anything off of the county and town, I'm sorry, it's a county and state right away themselves. You really do have to go to 150 feet, and then you start getting some of the land adjacent to the right of way where you could possibly put a sign, assuming that the state and the county won't want to permit this type of sign in the right of ways.
Now, I know that I've asked for this a couple of times, and I think this is very, very helpful for the public to get some examples of what these things actually look like, with the landscaping, with the hardscape around them, and the stone, and the way that they're sort of packaged, so that people can actually see what this looks like. And again, we're not looking at a large sign, but something that's a little bit more on the smaller side as these things go. So I'd like to see, and I think it would benefit everybody if we were able to provide some examples, because I'm a visual person. I need to kind of see it. I know what it looks like because I've seen these, but I think that the public needs to get a better understanding of what this is going to look like. We're all used to passing that massive ugly billboard on 9W, and I think people think that it's that size, or it's going to be that, it's not going to be attractive. So are we gonna be able to provide that kind of information for people? 'Cause-
My suggestion would be, I think we can, and what we can do is put together some samples. The difficulty is, we don't know who's going to provide this sign ultimately, because right now we would only be approving the change in the law. Then there would be a process to obtain any proposals from companies that were interested. However, I think that we could take a sampling of the types of signs that are out there, perhaps photographs. The board can sort of review those and tell the people what you envision, what you find, appealing in those types of signs, and say,
There are
this is what
pictures
we're
up
looking at.
there of
Yeah.
these signs that are encased in like a field stone with, toppers on the pillars and then plantings around them. I mean, there's a way to make this attractive, and that's what we would be, that's at least what I would be supportive of if this was to move forward, and the different sizes, but I think it's important for people to see that.
Yeah, I think I would suggest, for example, we'll find a picture of a sign that we know this is the size. People can get at least in perspective a visual of, for example, what does a 15 by 8 foot, sign look like on the roadside, that kind of thing. Take some samples. I don't think we'd able to say this will be it, but
Right.
it'd
No,
be
but it's an
concepts.
example of different
Yeah.
sizes and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think we could do that for the hearing on the 27th. The law for the members of the public and for the board would be available no later than the 20th of January, so it could be obtained by members of the public from the town clerk's office. It'll be sent to the board members, and then on the 27th, we can continue this hearing based on that revised local law, and we'll put it out to the planning board and the county and other interested parties.
And have we ascertained whether or not we're talking about one double-sided sign that can be viewed from two directions, or?
Just one.
Well,
It's like a TV, almost.
Right, I know, but it can't be viewed from
Not-
southbound as well as northbound, or how does?
I don't want to say it can't be, but I'm sure it can be, but usually it would be on a corner, so it's like, so you're seeing it from the whole intersection, from where, if you're stopping at a four-way intersection, where you'd be able to see the thing from each spot. We don't want, when people drive by at 30 miles an hour, to slow down and look at it. So in my opinion, I think it should only be one side. I believe that's the only ones I've seen. I've never seen a double side.
Okay.
But again,
I'm just trying to
it's something that's definitely, I was looking to see if it's on the website, because I know we did have something on the website from one of the companies, but I'll go back and double check again.
There's gotta be a lot of examples.
It's not.
yeah, that should be easy. Any other questions with regard to that?
From the board, any questions?
So we
Okay.
recommend we adjourn, continue the public hearing.
Continue the public hearing, we're going to hear some input here. From
Yes, the public hearing is still open if anyone
Yes.
wants to speak.
And we'll have some good word. And Max, in a week, oh no,
Can't go home.
Susan. Anybody waiting, once we get through these public hearings, we'll go right. That's been great.
Susan Falaris, 87 Montville Road. One short, real quick question. Whose sign is on 9W across the street from the bank, up from the Rite Aid, that it's a big black sign that's flashing, I even forgot what it is, but it is very distracting. It's right there, the mobile station, the stoplight for the grocery store. This gas station, that gas station, it's right there between, excuse me?
What is it?
It's for people to stay away from that intersection, not to block it.
Is it a lit sign?
Yeah.
Huge sign.
Just stay- It's a DOT.
Is it a temporary sign that's put there?
No, it's one of those flashing light signs.
I have not seen that. I know that we did, I know Mr. Brising put a sign up there, I don't think it's lit, that's not the one you're talking about here, to not block the intersection, we received a lot of complaints.
State DOT has a temporary sign.
It's a temporary sign, okay, it's
It's a
temporary.
nice big one and it's ugly.
I did not see
And it is
it.
distracting.
Sign work.
That's the don't block the box
Yeah.
thing, so are they gonna put a
Okay.
standard non-lit sign?
There is something, I just did.
They just did it?
It's
Okay, we've gotten a lot of complaints from
They did,
from
I
that area.
know Mr. Brising. You guys put that up, correct? Oh, you did? I thought you just had to get permission to put it up.
State,
I don't know.
Uh,
Just, John Gazzola, Liberty Ridge. Just a quick question.
Hold on, John, you have to go over here. But just,
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike.
only because I have to get it on the record, it has to be on that mic.
Oh, okay.
But you can,
Sorry.
or for you to go.
You were right in saying,
John Gazzola, Liberty Ridge. I just have a quick question, and Mr. White's commentary, I think, has a lot of validity in what he has said. The only question I have is, I get the impression that we want to be isolated. In other words, we're Stony Point, they're Haverstraw. We can't say anything about them, but on what they're doing.
We're in a different public hearing, obviously. We're talking about the sign now. We got that.
Oh, I thought you were still on. I thought
guess
they
we
said
can
the
take
public
it.
hearing was open.
It's a different public hearing, but we'll let you go. I just want to make sure you realize that.
My point is, I get the impression that what happens in Haverstraw happens in Haverstraw. However, Mr. Phillips, with the gasification plant, he's been all over the press condemning it, he's suing us. He brought in the NAACP about the poor kids in the West Haverstraw Elementary School. Isn't there some kind of an agency that oversees a town when it impacts the quality of life of its neighbor? That's all I ask.
Good question.
Thank you.
Good question, Jim.
Go ahead, George. I'm
George,
sorry.
we'll talk about the sign. I'm not a fan of electronic billboard sign. I was on the committee that came up with the sign law originally, and we purposefully said we didn't want those kind of signs in Stony Point. I find them distracting and not very appealing to look at. Distracting when you drive by, and I think we have enough people being distracted on the road and driving off the road these days, where I don't think we need to add another distraction for them to be reading as you're driving. And you'll be reading it when you're driving, whether it's at an intersection or not. The issues that we had with the sign, on the original proposed sign, part of it was the size and the way it would appear, and part of it was also the arrangement that the town was trying to seem to come up with a company that gave us advertising space on the sign that basically they created advertising for. And I think the arrangement was we got one ad for every 8 that they were going to get, which didn't seem like a very good deal from my point of view. So if you happen to be going by the sign, when an ad was coming up, you see the ad, and if you happen to be maybe going by when one of the 8 signs were going up for the town, you would see town information. So to propose that as being a benefit for the town, I think is misleading at the very least. But in any case, I think that if you're going to repackage this somehow and reconsider what you're doing, I think the whole thing needs to be looked at, not just the size of the sign and the appearance of it, but how it would be arranged, whether the town would own it, whether we'd have control over what kind of advertising would be on it, if any advertising at all should be on it, whether it should just be a town sign for town news. Those are all considerations, I think, for the people in the town. So I think that ought to be repackaged as a new proposal, not as a continued public hearing. So if you're going to have a continued public hearing on this prior to the public really knowing what it is, I don't think that's a good idea. I think it should be presented next meeting, if you have time to present it by then, so the public sees what you're presenting, and then schedule a public hearing based on that revision. We've been going now for at least, I think, a couple of months with an open public hearing on this, and not much has happened. We've been waiting for whatever you're going to propose next time. So I'd like to have a chance to see that before we have a chance to comment on it, to understand what it is you're proposing first, and not have to do that in the same meeting for a public hearing. So I would be in favor of an informational meeting describing what it is that you're proposing at the next meeting, and then schedule and properly notify the press that you're going to hold a public hearing on that at some future date, to give them at least 10 days notice. Thank you.
Thank you, George. That's definitely something we can take into consideration. I agree we've waited this long with another month or so. So I think, and I really want to say this in public, I really think when we're done with this sign, you're going to like it. I really do believe that. I think you're going to go, wow, I didn't know that's where it was. I really hope that.
I see more that I don't like than the ones I do like. So I'm keeping it open.
I know you are. I see that.
I'm in favor. But if you're going to do it again, repackage what you want to do. I don't think the last one was particularly well thought out personally. Repackage what you're going to say and give the public an opportunity to be knowing what it is, and then a chance to speak about it.
Can I just ask George a question? You were on the master plan committee probably a couple of times. I mean, you've been through this drill several different times. Was there any discussion about not permitting traditional billboards? We have a billboard in town that's probably 20 by 60 or 20 by 40. It's big.
I don't think
what was the position of the master plan committee and your group when as it pertains to those types of traditional, very large traditional billboards?
I don't think that was part of the master plan, to tell you the truth. I think it was part of the sign law that was done prior to your last sign law. The original sign law was done years ago. And Bob Geneslow was actually the planner back then, and it was basically to identify, well, it was basically signs. I don't think it talked about the existing billboard signs, to tell you the truth, that I remember.
There was no discussion about
Yeah.
eliminating those in the code.
Yeah. That law's been revised a couple of times, though. It is your current sign law. You know, whatever your current sign law says is what it is now. Back then, it particularly identified twirling and animated signs like kind of like that, full of air goes up and down, little things like that. We didn't want those in town. I mean, we thought that's kind of, take it for down in one catastrophe somewhere down there where they had a lot of stuff, but, yeah. But on Stony Point, people didn't think that was very appealing to the town.
Right.
And we didn't, and you know what it is that when one does it, the next one wants to do it. It's not just one. So it's like, you'll see 3 or 4 of them. If you're gonna have electronic signs on the stores.
Because I happen to think that 20-foot by 50-foot billboard, whatever it is very much out of character.
Right.
The existing
Right.
billboard. So I just wanted to.
That's probably
know if there's a
grandfathered
discussion.
in to some degree. I don't know the story of that, but that was certainly pre-existing to the sign law that I was on. Yeah, the sign law.
Thank you.
A lot more.
Okay, so we're going to keep this open, unless there's anyone else that has a comment tonight. Okay, so we'll keep that open, and we'll move on to our regular meeting. I'm going to add something, but I promised Ms. Beth Ferguson that we have number 6 for the board members, number 6, number 9, and number 10, all pertaining to bans and bonding. And we have with us Beth from Capital Markets. I believe that's where you're from, correct? Yeah. Beth from Capital Markets, and to talk about all 3 of these. So I apologize, I'm going out of order, so we're going to go to number 6 first. Am I correct in saying that, Karen? Okay. So number 6 is to discuss our highway garage ban. When I say highway garage ban, this is the property on Smith Street that we purchased some, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. And we banned it, and we're up to bond it again this year. This is something we discussed at budget time and before that. So we have Beth here to discuss, and Karen, if you have to chime in, chime in.
Yes, so I'm Beth Ferguson with Capital Markets Advisors, and I am the town's, my firm is the town's financial advisor. We advise you anytime you go into the capital markets with other clients to invest. So, yes, I'm not sure what the initial amount was on that ban, but what's outstanding right now is $380,000. And you originally issued it 7 years ago to purchase that property. And when it comes due this May, you'll have to go to long-term financing because you're up on your ban renewals. You're not allowed to go any longer according to tax law. So I think, do they have copies of this? If you want to look, number 3 pertains to this. And the decision will need to be made probably about 8 weeks before it renews, which would put you at March 1st. What kind of term you want to go for with that bond? And I put down some scenarios here because you can go up to 24 years still because it was land and you're allowed to finance for up to 30 years. But the longer you finance, the more interest you have overall. Of course, if you decide to go with, say, a 10-year, then your payments are higher each year, but the total amount of interest that you pay, similar to a mortgage, is going to be less. So it's just something that you need to take under consideration at this point. In the current market, if you're looking at 10 years, you're at 2.4%. If you go out to 24 years, it's 3.8%. That's in the current market. With a little bit of a cushion, a 0.25% cushion, because rates are just so low right now. And you can certainly finance, for any term in between that, or less than 10 years if you so chose.
Would they be straight maturities, or can they be callables?
So it would be callable. We would put an 8-year call on that, because that's what the market will bear. Traditionally, it was 10 years, but the last 4 or 5 years, we've been putting it down to 8 years, which means then in 8 years you can refinance it if you want. Okay, or pay it off. Prior to that, you could do an advance refunding if the money made sense.
No, not if he's there.
No, we're just going
And
to
just so you know, the board originally did a bond resolution for this when it was originally financed. There's no additional resolution that you need to do at this time. It's just that you need to make the decision
By May.
by March 1st, because they paid you on May 1st.
Oh, sorry.
And we'll need a little time to get the offering document, get an underwriter in place and that kind of thing.
Okay, so is it good with the board if we're going to put this aside? I know we'll go back and forth, I will speak with Karen and get all the exact information, what we could do, or other choices we could do or something.
Yeah, my guess, I don't know if we should come back and forth up here now, or you're going to each of these items.
No, we're going to talk about each item. We're going right into the next one, so we're not going to make a decision on this.
I think in the end, I'm looking for it all to roll into one big
Yeah.
bonding and what your recommendations are, which I like what I see. And then there's just, we had a lot of potential things that we could bond. And then, so that's not something we could agree to tonight because it's, there's a lot involved here.
Sure.
But is that your intentions of going through with us tonight?
You could absolutely, there's some other things.
Yeah, we're not talking about, oh, I'm sorry, we're talking, the equipment is banning over for a 5-year ban, correct?
The list of equipment.
The list of equipment, that's not what you're talking
Okay, don't we have the ability to do both, right?
So the bans right now for the equipment, and that's one of the other items here I'm talking about next, that's 5 years, and you pay that off in 5 years. And as you, some rolls off, and you're adding new 5-year, and it keeps you short, and it's the conservative way to go, is you're paying it off as quickly as you can. Now, to the extent you have other long-term projects, you could add that to this land, ban. But that, it would need to be done by May 1st. Because this has to go to permanent financing by May 1st, which would mean if you had something else that you wanted to do, you would actually have to adopt a bond resolution for that. And it would have to run through its permissive and estoppel periods, it's about 60 days. So, sometime next month, you'd have to decide that.
I just want to make sure on the banning, you're talking about, the banning is a 5-year ban, we can do that separately, if that's the equipment that we talked about during budget time.
We talked about.
Was that a phone that just
I don't know who that was.
No, it was a phone.
Somebody's letting us know.
Okay, so the banning for the equipment is stuff that we should keep totally separate from this bond.
Well, we have 3 different agenda items here, but I'm trying to pull them together from a standpoint of what opportunities do we have now to do, what is the best potential for financing, ban bonds, et cetera, and what other things are coming up this year that we're aware of that we can do. We discussed this briefly at the budget session, but we blew by it, and I was not surprised it was on the agenda until I got the package of the day. So when I'm looking at it now, I just want to make sure that this is an opportunity when she does the bonding. It's it's the best, it's cheaper to do it all in one shot. And with other opportunities, I want to make sure we avail ourselves of the opportunity to review everything that's available. And we talked about a lot of different opportunities here, so during the process. So this is the time, it won't be resolved tonight, but I think that by the next meeting, and maybe by the first February meeting, we may come up with something else we want to do. So I think it's something that we have to at least pursue.
And so actually, if I skipped down to the third item, which is the refunding.
Right, that's what I
We
thought.
might want to try to do those at the same time.
Yes.
It would still be 2 separate series because the refunding bonds would have to be separate.
Sure.
But you could get some economies of scale by doing those together.
Sure.
But my understanding in number 10, number 10 on our plan, the potential bond refunding is a savings of, explain. Could you just explain exactly how to save,
Sure, so right now you have your Series 2005 bonds outstanding.
Yes.
And they are callable in July this year, 2015. And you can refund those in the current market for $187,000 in budgetary savings. It's approximately $23,700 a year in savings, similar to a mortgage refinancing. So currently, the interest rate on the 2005 bonds is an average 3.87%, and the new in the current market would be 2.16%. And that's why you're getting the savings. And the savings are net of any costs that would be incurred for,
Would that have to be moved on, not tonight, but like Is that, it's not locked in, the savings you're talking about is as of today?
It's as of today, and market conditions can always change.
Sure.
So that's, I would say you do need to adopt a resolution, a bond resolution to proceed with that.
And what's going on in the economy now, it'll lose us quick.
You know, I
Absolutely.
had a crystal ball, because 3 years ago I was saying, I think rates are gonna go up, but it just, it's not.
Well, you know what us when we did the beat funding, we did,
My firm was not. That's the only transaction we haven't been involved with. That was, I think it was environmental capital, perhaps. It was back in 2012
I
or
was
something
surprised
like
this was
that.
even due at this point. I thought we refinanced everything just a couple of years back. And we had done that.
This probably couldn't have done this back then, because the call date wasn't until 2015. And if you had done an advance refunding, you would have had a lot of negative arbitrage, because it would have been sitting in an escrow account until you could call it. And so that's probably why it wasn't done
Well,
at that
we
time.
went to look at that back then, and we ultimately did. The prepayment penalty, because the rates have dropped so low, we never did it because of the prepayment penalty, but then the rates were just so low that, there still was a savings. But I thought we handled all the refinancing at that point, obviously.
And actually, you have other bonds outstanding. These are the only ones that could be refunded right now and get you savings. There's a 2007 A and B bond issue that, probably in another year and a half, I'll be coming to you if rates still look good and saying, the call date will be up on that, it's time to start looking at that.
Are there penalties, still prepayment penalties on those two maturities? Could they be rolled in? I mean,
They could be included in this issue. The issue would be, there's negative arbitrage, because they wouldn't be called until probably sometime in 2017. So even though we have a low interest rate of 2.17 or 2.16, the issue is those funds that are issued today would have to sit in an escrow account at a bank in treasuries, and you're going to get 0.1%. So there's a negative carry on those for like 2 years, and it's going to negate any savings that you're going to get by trying to refund those today, because they're going to be sitting in that account only earning 0.1%, and you'll be paying on bonds at 2.16% because they've been issued today.
we still have to look at the ultimate maturity. I mean, we're gonna have to refinance them at that point, they mature. So, I mean, the rates at that point could be 3-4%.
That's right, rates could be higher. Yes, yes. The issue being, if you refunded it today, you'd actually have this savings, you'd actually end up paying more.
I
because you're-
understand, but over the long run, it could work out the way, if rates went the right way. So I just want to make sure we explore it, that's all.
Okay, so item number 10, potential bond refunding. Are we moving on this tonight then? I understand.
So what you'll have to do is you'll have to get bond counsel to draft a bond
That's
resolution.
fine, okay.
And so I would suggest you do that at your next meeting.
That's fine,
or
okay. I
sometime.
just want to make sure.
We can add to it, right? I mean, if we're looking at other items to add on to it, if what we agree to now, we agree to this amount, and we decide to add something at the next meeting in 2 weeks, we can add that as we go.
We can take a look, we can take a look at the 2007, because I'm pretty sure that it's going to be negative,
Yes.
but I'll take a look at it.
They had said that it was negative arbitrage because it wasn't callable, and I think we want to wait until the negative
Until you're
arbitrage
closer.
gets closer, so that you don't risk, losing money on it. And then you decide not to do it.
We'll take a look at it and tell you what the actual numbers
But that's
are.
what James said.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions about anything? Do you want to?
We're still going to do the payment, right?
Yes, did you want to talk a little bit about the capital,
The
skipped over the capital
equipment.
improvement
Yes.
ban? So currently, you have outstanding just less than 1.5 million in equipment bans, and they mature over the next 5 years. I know there's a proposal to issue about just less than 790,000 in this year in new projects. I did put together a schedule, and that's under Roman numeral 2, just so you can see, if you take what's outstanding and what's proposed, what your total principal and interest is, just on issuing that. So it's
This is the list of,
that,
this
or
is the list of equipment bans, you can see the.
Oh, okay.
This is a summary
This is a summary here.
This is
So
the
if you're
summary here.
looking
This
at
is summary.
this one, yeah, the ones in the first column that say outstanding are you're locked into those, and that's not changing. And then what's in green is proposed, and yellow is the total. So you're looking at total debt service.
We don't have color in the middle, yeah.
Oh,
The
sorry.
darker one, the shaded one, yeah.
I should have brought color for everybody.
We're gonna bond a new color.
So, all right, so the one that says total,
Look at shaded.
okay, is what you would be on the hook for if you did the one in the middle that says 2015 proposed and what you currently have outstanding. That's not adding in any new equipment, and I know the last several years, I went back and took a look. It's run from like 280,000, 500,000, 550,000. This year, you're adding quite a bit more at 790,000. So I just want you to be mindful of, adding to debt service.
Well, yeah, this is, at this point now, I would be biggest concerns, doing some of this financing of the purchases, but from a financial standpoint, the financing is the best thing to do it.
Interest rates are low. Yeah. Interest rates are very low.
Yeah, so from that standpoint, and we're, as Larry has all kinds of truck issues all the time, and we've been holding them off, and these trucks are so old now, you indicated, 700,000, we should be looking at these opportunities, and the longer we put this off is gonna work out better for us. If we ban them on these things, that's what I'm trying to get at, see what the best scenario is. I think you have to look at all those, because there's a lot of things still on the table that we hadn't agreed to, that we may change our mind on as a result. Well, in additional
That's
items.
my question. Have these all been approved?
Well, these were on budget this year,
Proposed equipment schedule.
Yeah, this
From
round
the
budget.
proposed equipment schedule.
but they were all budgeted
To
to be
the
banned.
list. I mean, yes.
Yeah, but you may consider, and he says it's contradictory, how I was taught, but you may want to consider moving a truck next year to this year's and doing it from that standpoint, because you have the opportunity to ban it now. I know, Larry.
We all start writing down?
I'm still trying to
I've
get
never seen Larry this happy.
Larry, come on.
Well, if you finance it, it's kind of like you buy a house, you don't have to have the cash for it.
I do. I'm in favor, say aye, Larry.
Oh, I didn't say the one.
Department head roll call on that.
I guess my question here tonight to the board, are we ready to move on the equipment list to ban?
I think Jim said you might want to add.
What I'm saying is, if we have a little time.
Okay, well, I'm just saying,
I don't
because we have
want-
two items right here, that's
Oh, well, okay, I
$100,000.
said it earlier in the meeting, I'm not trying to delay the process of getting these trucks. I'm just trying to delay the process that we're gonna pay for it. And if we have the opportunity to ban a lot of these, I think we have to avail ourselves of that, because that's gonna help us out long-term from that standpoint, and help spread out the financial aspects on our budget. We spent a lot of time talking about the budget and arguing about it, and we still haven't purchased the things we wanted to do. This could avail itself of an opportunity with the potential of the cost savings with interest rates right now. Where next year we turn around, this is gonna be, how are we gonna finance a new truck next year? We're not gonna go issue with one truck.
Well, I think what happens is, I know you know this stuff, Chip, but, 100 grand goes on this year, I'm just picking numbers out of the hat. X amount goes on this year, and every 5 years, we're dropping, we're almost replenishing what we're taking out. I mean, it's not always equal.
But as we indicated,
But from the
it's
things
up
we
and
did
down
5 years
years.
ago.
It's up and down years. It's a situation where I think this discussion on everything, and then we make a decision.
Okay, the only reason that I have these two anyway, with Mr. Brissing and Mr. Stalker, with the Parks Department and the Highway Department for these two trucks, which total almost 100,000 between both of them, I think it's how many weeks out, Larry? I mean, it was a long period. That's what
Like 16.
it was like, how much?
Once.
Yeah, like 3 months or 4 months, right? So that's why we wanted to kind of get it
16
all.
weeks.
It's ordered out, so that's, so they do have it,
Right.
when they, for the
Just
summer.
So,
understand to avoid the doubling of issuing costs. These other bans from last year aren't going to expire until June. So we're going to have the bond council in his resolution permit us, if, these get approved and the invoice comes in, that the town can
Right, reimburse,
right, from the bond.
Right, well, as we stated, we had that conversation in the meetings, yeah. So, I mean, those kind of things, we weren't prepared for this way. I think it's a great opportunity to avail ourselves of that. If it's June now, if the deal was come in June, we just roll them all into one. I'm just worried about how we're gonna pay. Approving it is one thing, but paying for it, you know, we're not violating anything related to it.
What you need to do actually is, you'll need to adopt a bond resolution, so it might be approved in your budget, but you'll want to adopt a bond resolution for any project that you're planning to lay money out, or if you want to get reimbursed, and you need to have the bond resolution in place before you spend any dollars. So that's another document that you want to have on council.
We indicate we could add to it.
Oh, well, actually, you know, you can make it for as much as you want, your resolution. If you go down the road, then you don't have to decide to borrow for all those projects.
I think it's good for 10 years. You don't
It
have
is,
to-
yes.
I mean,
Yes, so you can list, you can put a wish list.
It opens the door for that
You can put
conversation.
list in, and then not bond for all of those at the same time.
That's probably better idea too.
The issue being that you want to have it adopted, these come due June, I think, 11th, so May, April, you know, by April, you would have to have
I think everybody wants to
resolution
think
voted on, but maybe you could do that, you know.
I think most of us are here, you would think that you had to have specifically each item. We have to put it in here where we can kind of go over it. And, yeah, that's with that, but basically, you know, say you turned around and said, it's twice that, and then we don't, you know, we go to do it, we only do that amount. When we go to do it, it could be less than that.
What would be the interest rate on the general fund?
You know, I estimated high, because that's what I do, I want to be conservative, so I estimated 1.5%, but the last few years, you've gotten under 1%, it was closer to.
Under 1%?
Under 1%, 0.8, I think it was last year, yeah. So for bond anticipation, so
Can we lock that in now, or we gotta wait till June and then hope
you have
for
to wait
the
till June, or we'll price it at the end of May, yeah.
Yeah, wait till you do it.
But the rates have been that low for the last 3 years, I went back and looked. Yeah, it's been under 1% for each of the last 3 years.
Well, yeah, just we'll go forward on these things here, review order and stuff, but just either at the next meeting, we approve the higher amount, I think we just have to follow up a little bit on it, say what other things we can do. That's all, I mean, that's nothing,
All right,
not
so,
against doing it, we just, how much we're gonna do.
the only, listen, my concern, I'm gonna order $100,000 of trucks, where am I getting the money? That's a big concern.
We're gonna bond it.
Okay, as long as we do, I don't wanna order 2 trucks here tonight for $100,000, and then in 6 weeks from now, say, you know, we're not gonna do that. Yeah, okay, I just wanna make sure that we're all clear on that. All right, you're good. All right, I understand, I need you, truck. Okay, so,
We already approved the budget.
well, that doesn't get it, you know that?
We're just, you know, this is the financing side of paying for it.
Okay. So I believe we're done with you.
Here's as long as you want.
I appreciate you coming out. I'm sorry it took 2 hours before I made it to the microphone.
It's,
I know I
that's the
wanted to-
nature of the business, and I
Okay.
understand, so.
Okay, so again, anybody else